$4.5 billion remaining unspent in the TARP funds in the infamous bailout plan that was passed earlier this year, or rather was ramrodded through the United States Congress earlier this year. And so I found it interesting that these allegedly counterfeit bonds, so we're told, were in the exact denomination of the remaining unspent TARP funds. And I wondered, and I still wonder, if in fact this was not an attempt by a certain faction within the U.S. power hierarchy that took this money out of the TARP funds and was trying to move it secretly into Switzerland, perhaps to exchange for Swiss francs or gold or platinum or silver, anything that had more value than an increasingly worthless U.S. dollar that they themselves must know is shortly slated to become even worth less and perhaps to die entirely. And so I think that there may have been a move on the part of the U.S. government itself, or at least a faction within the power establishment, to take some of their own money and divest their own dollars out of the dollar, so to speak, because they themselves know how grim the outlook will be in just a few short months.
Well, Richard, that's actually a great summary of what's going on there with that incident, and it's a fascinating small incident that you picked up on, and kudos to you for sort of bringing that to our attention. I do want to say that you're maybe very close to your phone receiver. I'm not sure what it is, but because you're coming across very muffled, so I'm going to ask our audio engineers to try to finesse the sound on Richard there as much as possible. Can you hear me okay at this moment, Richard?
Yes, you're a little bit louder, though your voice is still pretty soft.
Okay. So at any rate, we want to really welcome you on our show. Richard is a PhD. That's important to add here, and so he is a doctor, legitimate, with that title. And Richard, you are a fascinating guy, and we're really excited to be talking to you today. I'd love you to talk a little bit about how you got into investigating underground bases for our listeners.
Absolutely. Back in the late 1980s, let me say first of all that I was born and reared on the East Coast. I am a native Virginian. But back in the 1980s, late 1980s, I was deep into about a 10 or 11 year project of being a professional student. And I went away to the Southwest to do a couple of graduate degrees, and I was out in New Mexico and Arizona for about 8 years, and I did get 2 degrees out of it, and along the way I saw a lot of wonderful countryside and met some very interesting people, some of them very highly interesting. And when I arrived in the Southwest, I would say for the first time really in my life, I began encountering people who were talking in all seriousness about so-called secret underground bases. Well, this was a little bit new for me. The year was 1989, and I heard all kinds of stories from a variety of people about underground military installations, underground alien facilities, alleged alien facilities, and interconnecting underground tunnels with high-speed tube shuttle trains that were zooming back and forth underground. And I heard all of these allegations, and I thought they were very interesting stories. No one provided a shred of hard documented proof to substantiate what they were saying, and so I just took in all of this more or less as interesting Southwest folklore, if you will. But I was very heavily involved in my graduate studies at that time and really couldn't look into these questions in any depth, if you will pardon the pun. So when I got a break in my studies in about 1992, it was, 3 or 4 years later, I finally got a little breather when I began to write my thesis, and I had more control over my day-to-day schedule and time. So I did a little bit of research. I began looking at federal technical documents and government documents in the scientific and engineering literature across a wide variety of agencies, and going back in time decades.
We're having some kind of sound problem here. It looks like we lost Richard. Is that right? Bill, are you there? Hello?
Carrie, can you hear me?
Now I can. We seem to have had some kind of interference. I do want to say here, Richard, before you continue, that I have been around Richard when he's supposed to speak. He was supposed to speak at Laughlin, and I guess you did eventually.
Yes.
But every time, it's almost without fail, you have been almost banned from the airwaves, from being able to speak at conferences. Special technical interference will always occur. I was hopeful that nothing would happen here, but I want to just put this on the record right away that
it's true. It's interesting you mentioned that. It has happened to me time and time again over the years. I was in the middle of an interview with Art Bell one time, and everything just went dead. I don't know why. It's true that there have been technical problems. Other times I've spoken. I once had a TV crew come to my house to interview me, and they set up, and of course you've done these types of interviews, Carrie, and you know they have special batteries that they use for their cameras and sound and things, and we got all ready to go. And they cued me and the person interviewing me, and we got about 5 seconds into the interview, and just that quickly, all of the batteries drained down to zero. And luckily the guy had some more batteries, and he put them in, and we were able to do the interview. And that has happened to me before when I was interviewed by various crews. There's a certain type of energy that attaches to this discussion. It attracts the interest of, shall we say, terrestrial intelligence agencies and people who like to meddle and cause confusion and difficulty and problems. They work for various alphabet soup agencies, but it also seems to attract the attention of others. I don't know if they are in so-called other dimensions, or I don't know what you would call it.
I mean, I'm going to say it attracts the Greys and the reptilians, because they're the ones that inhabit a lot of the underground bases.
Yeah, you see, I mean, I can't say anything about that. You're welcome to say that if you will. I don't have any proof in that regard one way or the other. I can only say that there have been a number of times over the years when I have been speaking or giving interviews where there have been problems of all kinds with projectors, with computers, with sound systems, with cameras, with recorders. I mean, so this is just the latest in a list of those types of occurrences. But let's go on. Let's not be deterred.
Absolutely.
How much of what I said did you hear?
That your information is so important. This is why I'm having you on. This is only our third radio show, but I am aware of this sort of ban that's been going on around you and how they try to keep you quiet. And I want to make sure you can talk, okay? So as soon as we come back...
Richard, our engineer, has been trying to get hold of the audio levels to straighten them out. How does this sound to you now? Can you hear us properly?
Bill, I can barely hear you.
You can barely hear me. That's a real bummer. Okay. I'm just going to tell a couple of stories here for your entertainment and your reaction. Can you hear that all right, what I'm saying?
Yes, but barely. Go ahead, please.
Okay. One of the stories is something that actually was told to us by John Lear in our recent interview with him last year, which is entitled John Lear Tells All. And he was talking about the underground shuttle system, because there's an underground base at Sandia, which is way out in the Nevada desert, and unlike Area 51, Groom Lake, it doesn't have an airstrip. And so the question then is, how do these guys get to work there? And of course they get to work in the shuttle that goes from Las Vegas. And when we asked John, well,